Winnebago is closing factories and moving production around, including putting Winnebago towables on the same manufacturing campus as Grand Design. So what does that tell us about where the RV industry is headed? Plus, the National Park Service is changing where you can use electric scooters. Vermont wants new rules for primitive camping, and Olympic National Park is trying to find a woman who had a rabid bat caught in her hair. We've also got a new 4-season travel trailer, a British expedition vehicle company opening up shop in Utah, and some Keystone owners who might be owed $2,000 apiece. All that and more. I'm Jason Epperson. This is RV Miles, and it's time for the latest in RV and camping news. Welcome back, everybody. Winnebago Industries is closing 2 RV manufacturing plants as the company shrinks and consolidates its manufacturing footprint, according to a press release. What the company calls a strategic manufacturing alignment, which is corporate speak for moving production out of 2 factories and into other factories where the company already has available capacity. In Indiana, Winnebago branded travel trailer production is moving out of the company's existing Winnebago towables factory and into Grand Design's facilities. Winnebago is the parent company of Grand Design. The old Winnebago plant will close and eventually be offered for sale. Grand Design itself is also going to consolidate some of its production lines within that campus to make room for Winnebago towables. Now, despite the plant closure, this apparently isn't resulting in a major round of layoffs in Indiana. Winnebago told Inside Indiana Business that the current Winnebago towables facility employs 276 people. Only 4 of those jobs are expected to be eliminated, with the remaining employees moving over to the Grand Design campus. The companies have operated as fairly distinct RV brands with their own factories, product development, and manufacturing processes. The company says that's going to continue. The 2 brands will maintain separate leadership, product development, sales organizations, dealer networks, and product portfolios. And it says no existing product lines are being discontinued as part of this move. Winnebago's current travel trailer lineup isn't enormous. Its major active lines right now are the Thrive, the Micro Mini, and the more affordable Access. We've also been watching, though, indications that Winnebago is preparing to get back into the fifth wheel market after being largely absent from that category under the Winnebago brand. In the Q&A segment of its quarterly investor call back in March, the company hinted that Winnebago branded fifth wheels could be returning to the market soon. Winnebago previously sold fifth wheels under the Voyage, Spider, and Mini Plus nameplates. They discontinued their last fifth wheels around 2020 and 2021 model years. And I've heard there's something that may be debuting very soon, like very soon. And if you're Winnebago Industries, you want to develop a new fifth wheel, where would it make sense to build it? Maybe at the factory complex belonging to Grand Design, a company that already builds a whole lot of fifth wheels. Now, Winnebago has not said that its fifth wheels are just going to be rebadged Grand Designs, and I don't want to imply that they are, but putting both brands' towable production under the same campus certainly creates some efficiencies. It's something we've seen some of in recent years. Heartland moving over to Jayco comes to mind, and it's something I think we're going to see more of across the RV industry if this downturn continues. This downturn's looked very different from what happened during the financial crisis back in 2008, 2009, and 10. Back then, RV manufacturers went bankrupt, brands disappeared, and companies were gobbled up by what are now a very few large parent companies with large portfolios of brands. So instead of necessarily killing a brand off now, like I think a lot of people thought we would see a lot of brands closing up in these recent years, the company can now consolidate manufacturing. You can build multiple brands in fewer facilities, share components and engineering, change the interiors, the exterior graphics, and you can still market those RVs to different customers through different dealer networks. Heck, half of the time it's actually the same RV, just restickered, so it can be sold exclusively in an area at a dealership when the sister brand is exclusive across the street. The other half of this announcement is happening in Iowa, where Winnebago motorhomes are produced. Winnebago is closing its motorhome facility in Lake Mills, where it's been building Class B camper vans, and moving that production to the company's much larger manufacturing operation in Forest City, Iowa. Winnebago told Inside Indiana Business that it does not expect jobs to be lost specifically because of that move. However, another Winnebago layoff is happening in Forest City that wasn't a part of the press release. An Iowa WARN filing, a WARN notice is a notice that you have to give the government and employees, if you're a manufacturer of a certain size, that you're going to be conducting mass layoffs or closing a plant. An Iowa WARN notice shows that 27 employees at Winnebago's specialty vehicles operation will be laid off effective November 30th. That's separate from the B van consolidation, but it comes at the same time as Winnebago reducing its overall manufacturing footprint. And this comes after rounds of larger workforce reductions back in 2025 when the company announced multiple layoffs and plant closures as it responded to lower RV demand and reduced production. And to be clear, layoffs aren't the only way RV manufacturers reduce their workforce. So workforce still might be reducing. A lot of it comes through attrition. Manufacturers reduce hours and employees then get other jobs because of it, or they just retire or move on for whatever reasons, and then nobody is rehired to replace them. The press release says the goal is to align operations with market demand and make better use of existing capacity. So, in plain English, Winnebago has more factory space than it currently needs, so it's putting more production into fewer buildings. And when Winnebago and Grand Design products start rolling out of the same manufacturing campus, I'm going to be very curious to see just how much DNA those separate brands eventually begin to share. More in a moment, but first, this episode is sponsored by RVmattress.com by Brooklyn Bedding. Get a real mattress for your RV instead of the cheap piece of foam that it came with at RVmattress.com by Brooklyn Bedding. They sell real mattresses in all the odd sizes RVs require, like short kings, Olympic queens, and odd bunk sizes, different thicknesses, and more. Their mattresses are toxin-free, they're made in their factory in Arizona, and shipped to you vacuum-sealed wherever you are. You just unwrap them and let them expand. They have a 120-night sleep trial, free shipping, and a limited lifetime warranty. But the best part is that the RV Miles community gets 30% off. It's the best deal they ever offer any day of the year with code RV Miles at rvmattress.com/RV Miles. That's rvmattress.com/RV Miles with the code RV Miles at checkout for 30% off. The National Park Service is changing the rules for electric scooters, hoverboards, segways, and a growing number of other small electric transportation devices. The new rule does two things that sound a little contradictory. It technically makes those devices prohibited by default, while also making it much easier for individual parks to allow them. Park Service has created a new category called powered micro-mobility devices. Basically, that includes electric devices weighing less than 150 pounds. Things like e-scooters, electric skateboards, hoverboards, one-wheels, and segways. It does not include e-bikes. Those already have their own National Park Service regulations. So previously, a lot of these devices were categorized exactly the same as motor vehicles, and that created some pretty weird situations. An electric scooter might technically be allowed on a road with cars and trucks, but then prohibited on a paved path right next to it because motor vehicles weren't allowed there, but maybe e-bikes were actually allowed on that path. The Park Service says the old rules were too restrictive off-roads and too permissive on-roads. So under the new system, scooters and similar devices can only be used in places that an individual park has specifically designated for them. This new rule banned them everywhere, and now superintendents have much more flexibility to make those designations where they can be allowed in certain places. They can potentially allow them on roads, parking areas, paved sidewalks, gravel paths, and even some trails, but only trails that were previously developed with things like gravel, asphalt, concrete, or other artificial materials. And they can do this without having to go through the lengthy federal rulemaking process. And they're still completely prohibited in federally designated wilderness areas. This could be particularly significant at urban National Park Service sites like the National Mall in Washington or the Golden Gate National Recreation Area, where rented scooters are already a common way for people to get around. But this also applies across the National Park Service system, including in campgrounds. So if you travel with an electric scooter or one of these other devices, you're going to need to check the rules at an individual park before you visit. The rule is scheduled to take effect September 11th. The National Park Service is trying to locate a woman who may have been exposed to rabies after an encounter with a bat at Olympic National Park. On August 9th, near Staircase Bridge, park officials say that a bat swooped down on an unidentified woman and was temporarily caught in her hair. That bat was captured and has since been tested positive for rabies. The woman has not been identified, and officials are urging her to seek medical care immediately and contact the Mason County Health Department. The bat also reportedly swooped at other visitors in the area, so anyone who may have had contact with a bat, even if they don't remember being bitten, should contact a healthcare provider and their local health department. Bat bites and scratches can be extremely small and aren't always noticeable. Rabies is almost always deadly once symptoms develop, but it is preventable when treatment is given properly after an exposure. Park officials stress that the overwhelming majority of bats are healthy and play an important role in the ecosystem, but visitors should never handle a bat dead or alive and should report unusual wildlife encounters to park staff. Here's an interesting new spin on RV ownership, although this one is definitely not aimed at the average camper. The Motor Coach Store, big fancy RV dealership, has launched what it calls the first fractional ownership program for luxury motor coaches, allowing several people to essentially share ownership of the same multi-million-dollar RV. And if your first thought is, so an RV timeshare, sort of, but the company is really modeling this after fractional ownership programs for private jets like NetJets and FlexJet. Under the program, buyers purchase a 25% ownership stake in a luxury motor coach and receive 10 guaranteed weeks of use each year. The Motor Coach Store then handles many of the things that normally come with owning one of these coaches, including storage, insurance, maintenance, coach preparation, concierge services, and trip coordination. And we're talking about the very top end of the RV market here. Shares in a new Prevost-based coach start at $539,999 at 25% ownership. That implies a coach valued at more than $2.1 million. Shares in some late model used coaches started around $250,000. On top of that, management fees begin at $1,500 a month or $18,000 a year, depending on the coach and the final agreement. The initial program will include coaches from Millennium Luxury Coaches and Loki Coach, with the company pitching it toward wealthy families, business travelers, and people in the sports and entertainment industries who might want a private coach, but don't necessarily want to own one full time. A $2 million motorhome that sits in storage for most of the year isn't exactly an efficient use of an asset. And if four owners can split the purchase price and somebody else handles storage, maintenance, and all the rest, you can see why that might appeal to someone already comfortable with fractional private jets or yachts. But I think really the interesting question here is, how does scheduling work? RV travel is so seasonal. A whole lot of people want to use their RVs during the same summer weeks or the same holidays, sporting events, winter travel periods. 10 weeks a year sounds like plenty until all four owners want 4th of July weekend or somebody wants to spend January and February in Florida. There's also something unusual about the math. 25% owners would collectively own the entire coach, but 10 weeks guaranteed use per owner only accounts for 40 weeks of the year. So presumably some of the remaining time provides room for maintenance, repositioning, scheduling flexibility, or additional usage, depending on the agreement. I don't think we're about to see fractional ownership of a Jayco travel trailer at your local campground, but at the extreme high end of the market where coaches can cost $2 or $3 million and owners might already be accustomed to paying management companies to handle their assets, it's a pretty fascinating experiment, I think. Before we get to the next story, quick reminder that the RV Miles Homecoming Rally is coming up October 7th through the 11th in Amana, Iowa. It is decidedly not a $2 million motor coach fair, but if you have one, we'd love to have you at our rig crawl where we walk through and see all everybody's RVs. This is our big annual get together with the RV Miles community. It's shaping up to be our biggest homecoming yet, but we do deliberately keep this rally intimate enough that we can spend time with everyone, hanging out, swapping stories, enjoying a few days together in one of our favorite places. There's a lot of door prizes, communal meals. We have a game show night, a trivia night, cornhole and poker tournaments, and more. Tickets are still available, and mile marker members get a discount. You can get all the details and grab yours at rvmiles.com/homecoming. We'd love to see you in Iowa this October. Some Keystone RV owners may be eligible for a $2,000 payment over allegations that their travel trailers were built with different roof materials than Keystone advertised. The case involves certain Passport Western Edition travel trailers sold new in California before December 1st, 2019, with serial numbers ending after HX414101. According to the class action lawsuit, Keystone represented these trailers as being built with 5-inch crowned galvanized steel roof trusses, but some were actually manufactured with wood roof trusses. Keystone's not admitted wrongdoing, but a federal court has entered judgment requiring the company to pay $2,000 to eligible owners whose trailers have the wood trusses. There are some pretty specific requirements here. You have to currently own the qualifying trailer. It must have been purchased new from an authorized Keystone dealer in California before that December 2019 cutoff, and it actually has to have the wood roof trusses. Trailers that were built with the advertised metal trusses aren't eligible. If you think you qualify, there's also not much time left. Claims and supporting documentation have to be submitted or postmarked by August 28th, with approved payments expected to be mailed October 2nd. The state of Vermont is proposing its first major update to primitive camping rules in more than 30 years with new restrictions. The rules apply to primitive camping on lands managed by Vermont's Department of Forest, Parks, and Recreation. Basically, camping in undeveloped areas without amenities like bathrooms, water, or designated campsites. It's wild camping, boondocking, whatever you want to call it. Under the proposal, campers would have to set up at least 200 feet away from rivers, streams, lakes, and wetlands, double the current 100-foot requirement. Campers would also be prohibited from cutting or burning live wood for campfires. Fires would still be generally allowed, but campers would have to use fallen wood and completely extinguish them before leaving. And the state would formally require a carry-in, carry-out policy for trash and belongings. A lot of that probably sounds like basic leave no trace camping etiquette, but the state says the rules haven't been updated since 1993, and increased use of these areas has created concerns about wildfires, water quality, and damage to sensitive ecosystems. The proposal would also give the state game wardens and other law enforcement officers more authority to issue trespass notices to people who violate the rules. None of this is final yet. Vermont is taking public comments through October 9th and will hold public hearings in September before deciding whether to adopt the changes. SylvanSport has unveiled a new compact travel trailer called the Vire. This one looks pretty interesting for those who want a smaller RV without giving up four-season capability or some serious off-grid power. The Vire is under 20 feet long and weighs less than 4,000 pounds dry, so it's designed to be towable by a wide range of SUVs and trucks. But SylvanSport's packed quite a bit into it. There's a U-shaped lounge that converts into the bed, a full kitchen, a surprisingly roomy wet bath with a cassette toilet. Some people like those, some people don't. And a huge double pane window that gives the interior a much more open feel than you usually get in a trailer this size. It's also built for four-season use with insulated composite walls, roof, and flooring, heated tank areas, and no wood in the structure. SylvanSport is backing the structure with a limited lifetime warranty for the original owner. The Vire comes with 600 watts of rooftop solar and integrated EcoFlow power system with an expandable battery bank. One of my favorite details, though, is how much thought they seem to have put into serviceability. Most of the plumbing and hookups are consolidated into one exterior utility compartment, while the battery system and the Truma furnace are accessible through another compartment under the dinette. SylvanSport also designed the trailer around hauling outdoor gear like bikes, kayaks, and paddleboards, rather than treating that storage as an afterthought. The Vire starts at $59,995. Pre-orders are open now, and deliveries are expected to begin in October. There's a new overland vehicle manufacturer setting up shop in the United States, Motorcraft. No relationship to Ford's Motorcraft parts line. It's a British company that builds some seriously capable expedition vehicles. Motorcraft is opening its first permanent U.S. facility this September in St. George, Utah, where it plans to build and convert vehicles, stock products, and fulfill orders for American customers. Motorcraft is based in England, where it operates a 60,000 square foot manufacturing facility and builds custom overland trucks essentially from the ground up. The company makes the vehicle bodies, furniture, kitchens, and bathrooms in-house, along with components like expedition doors and windows. For the U.S. market, one particularly interesting product is a prefab expedition camper body designed for the Ford F-550 chassis. The new Utah location will also give American customers somewhere to actually see completed vehicles and products instead of dealing with a company located an ocean away. And St. George is certainly an appropriate place for it, right in the middle of some of the best overlanding country in the West. Motorcraft is already teasing vehicle builds and products that will be coming to the American market. And finally, Go RVing, the marketing arm of the RV Industry Association, wants to remind you they've got a promotion running that could put a little more money back into your travel budget. They're celebrating America's 250th anniversary with something they're calling RV 250. They're giving one traveler $5,000 towards an RV adventure. To participate, you can pick up a special RV 250 travel passport at participating RV dealerships and campgrounds, take it along on your travels, and then submit a photo from an RV trip. Everyone who submits an eligible entry gets a free swag kit, and you'll be entered for the $5,000 prize. Entries have to be submitted by September 15th. So if you've already been RVing this summer or you got a trip coming up, you may already have everything you need to enter. We'll put the information in the description below. That's it for this week's episode. Thanks again to RVmattress.com by Brooklyn Bedding for sponsoring this episode. Head over to RVmattress.com/RVmiles and use the code RVmiles for 30% off. If you got something on this episode, hit the like button. If you want more like it, subscribe. And we'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.